Because of time difference and the difficulties of telephone communication, whatever, Ridley and I began a kind of a correspondence.
I was dealing specifically, really, throughout all of that with Walter. And it developed, I think it actually mutually developed almost into good fun. It was so scary, it was almost fun.
Which would be the sorts of conversations that a producer or a studio head would have with a director normally when you walk down to the set and say, well, what do you think? And remember, because part of, I felt my job during the shooting was to try to help everyone remember what we got into this in the first place for it. Because you're in the heat of battle and he's dealing with such extraordinary difficulties and actors who are so putting themselves out on the line that it's quite easy to forget what are the big thematic issues.
So there was this constant toing and froing, for the most part by fax.
I would look at a rewrite that came out of a rehearsal and I'd even have the issues, and then I'd write him 2 pages about it. It would be faxed to him and he'd read it and he says, this is rubbish. Then he'd write back his story to me and I'd get his writing. And we had this really very intimate and very energetic conversation that took place transatlantically. I think it was at the very end that I put them all together in a book and bound it and called it Letters to the Front and had it delivered to him. And it does provide a kind of an interesting insight.
I saw it as my job to keep fighting, to say, you are wrong if you do this. I don't believe people will like the character. I don't believe the plot makes sense. And if you keep fighting your corner, then eventually people will take it in. And so I would keep fighting. Ridley tended to have a reaction that was very much to do with the dynamics within a scene. He's got a kind of remarkable genius for knowing how a scene works. So he would look at it as the scene, how he was going to shoot it, and how the emotions were going to play within that scene. Doug Wick and Walter Parkes were both looking at the great story all the time. And Walter was a writer himself originally, and sort of still is a writer, really. Very much sees these things. So Doug, Walter, and I would argue out, where are we going? What are we planting for the viewer? What expectations are we arousing? How are we going to satisfy them? How are our characters evolving? And then, of course, when it got to the set, then people would start to argue about it as well, because everybody knew the script was in play.
People are constantly experimenting on how the script is written. So there are nuances in it that develop as Ridley sees the characters developing. The producer came up to me yesterday and he said, Oliver, coming from a coast, there's going to be some rewrites for next week. So I give them to you either tonight or over the weekend. So I say, fine. So listen, I'm a professional actor. Just give me something and I'll do my best to interpret it.
My main contribution during that period was reassuring everyone that the movie was going fine and getting the lines and the character and the piece working for both Ridley and Russell.
We've had a lot of difficult things on this film, right? Our script is being operated by committee, and that is not the best way to do it. It's actually the antithesis of how you should make a feature film. Detail and collaboration, absolutely, 100% yes. But at the end of the day, there has to be a captain of the ship. So we have a little bit of that going on. The positive end of that, though, is that every single person on the committee is absolutely into doing the movie.
Every time we had one of these collisions, the scenes were better for it, because both men were willing to give just enough to accommodate what the other needed.
There was always, through the early stages of the film, a sort of battle to get each section shot and each section contained, and it was like a day-by-day process, really, where Ridley was, reworking things on the script with the actors and working with the artists, working with Russell to push the characters to points which they, wanted to get them to. And I think that really became a part of what made the film so good, in a sense. I mean, I really do. I know that's all bullshit usually, but I do, because having stood outside trailer doors and in rooms and meetings and listening to the way these guys sort of fought to, make these characters real and make this story progress.